Another negotiation on tariff has been derailed. This latest tussle is between the United States and Canada, and the trigger for Donald Trump is an advertisement that is playing in Canada's Ontario, which features a former American President Ronald Reagan. But before we go further, here's an excerpt of the former Republican leader Ronald Reagan's presidential speech.
Now, that message of free trade is one I conveyed to Canada's leaders a few weeks ago, and it was warmly received there. Indeed, throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity.
The speech from decades past promotes free and fair trade amongst the countries and denounces a protectionist approach, which is the opposite of what the incumbent American president is advocating for. Now, the America First approach. The televised advertisement that is funded by the Ontario government is aimed to sow doubt amongst the Republican voters, using one of the party's most iconic voices. Now, the ad was set to run until the end of January next year and costs about 75 million Canadian dollars. Following the advertisement, which targets Trump's tariffs tirade, the U.S. president took to social media to lash out at Canada. His post said, and I quote, "Based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated." Ronald Reagan's Presidential Foundation and the Institute had criticized Ontario for running the advertisement. They said that Ontario did not seek permission to use these remarks and that selective audio and video in the advertisement misrepresents Ronald Reagan's full address. The latest standoff comes after weeks of negotiations between both the countries and also a recent visit by the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to the White House. Now, Trump's Truth Social post has also come a day after the address by Mark Carney, in which the Canadian leader spoke of expanding trade relations with other global players like India and China to boost non-US exports.
We're re-engaging with global giants India and China while we deepen our partnerships with our traditional allies. And to build on this momentum, I'm going to put it in context. Our goal for Canada is to double our non-US exports over the course of the next decade, generating more than $300 billion more in trade, and that's new orders for Canadian resources, technologies, and expertise.
And just hours ago, the Canadian Prime Minister has again addressed the tariff issue, saying that Canada is ready to pick up trade negotiations with the United States. But Carney, in his comments to the media, said what Canada can control is its trade diversification with other nations, essentially reiterating what he had said just about 24 hours ago. And earlier I spoke with Mr. Terry Milewski, a journalist and an author of Blood for Blood, 50 Years of the Global Khalistan Project. Listen to what he had to say.
One thing to remember here is that despite what Mr. Trump has said about this being a misrepresentation and the Reagan Foundation chiming in to back him up, that's nonsense. If you actually look at the original, it's not that long. If you actually look at the original address by Reagan, there is no misrepresentation at all. He was dead set against tariffs. He had a coherent argument against tariffs always and everywhere. Even though they were in a confrontation, the U.S. was in a confrontation at the time, in particular with Japan. So I think that if it were to be if this context were to be judged on substance, Mr. Trump has already lost the argument.